session.
Okay. So everybody's listening now? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, thank you very much. Welcome everyone to this seminar on generative artificial intelligence for education. I'm really, really happy and excited to announce and to present this lecturer, Professor Daniel Liu. As I was telling Professor Daniel Liu that his presence in this seminar has been long requested by many people that I know. So Daniel Liu has become a kind of legend, I would say, of the use of AI and generative AI on education. And so I'm really happy to have Daniel Liu, and I thank you very much for his presence. I'm going to introduce Professor Daniel Liu. He's a molecular biologist by training, programmer by night, researcher and academic developer by day, and an educator at heart. He works at the confluence of education and technology, student engagement, artificial intelligence, learning analytics, pedagogical research, organizational leadership, and professional development. He's currently a professor in education and innovation team in the DVC education portfolio at the University of Sydney. Prior to this, Danny was a teacher fellow in the Faculty of Science at the University of Sydney, where he has been closely involved in the award-winning redevelopment of a number of introductory science units, having coordinated and taught large undergraduate courses with 800 to 1,500 students. He has a strong background in student engagement, such as through technology and inquiry-based learning, student transition, and infusion technology through the curriculum. Danny's research career started with a PhD in the molecular and cell biology of plants, and his research and development focus has gradually shifted towards education after seeing the wide-reaching impact of good learning and teaching. So thank you again, Professor Danny Liu, for your presence, and you may start whenever you're ready.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and thank you for having me today. I'm going to share my screen and we can start talking about this. And also, I won't be taking the whole hour with my talk, and so if you have any questions, please feel free to save them until the end and we can have a chat through them. I would like this to be a discussion if possible towards the end. We'll see how that goes on this platform. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing a little bit about what we're doing at the University of Sydney and over the last 2.5, 3 years and what generative AI can kind of do and also what this means for us all across the world with education. Starting with the what can AI do, I was having a chat with Boris before we started, and I think it was really good to hear that the main areas of action around Mexico is just thinking that what can AI help us with? And so to help us think through that, I think there's a few useful things to think about to bring everyone up to the same page, to think about what AI can do currently. AI is a really interesting thing because I find it a very organic kind of intelligence, a very organic kind of software, and it's really interesting because the way that it's been used more and more so is in that kind of more organic way. This was a really interesting a study which was actually retracted because it had a few ethical issues with it. But when it was kind of known or became known a few months ago, it was basically where a bunch of scientists subjected Reddit users to AI without telling them. And in this particular example, it was them using AI responses to try and convince Reddit users about a particular thing, to try and change their mind. And it was really interesting because part of their retracted paper was saying that the treatments, which means the way that the AI could convince and change people's minds, far surpassed human performance. Okay, so AI is able to change how we think much better than humans can change how we think as part of this study. And so it's an interesting thing to think about the capabilities of AI, and not just generation of images or text anymore. It's actually changing the way that we think potentially as human beings. And so the question is, well, what does this mean actually? Like, if the AI is this capable, what does it mean for us? This was another paper out, another research out earlier this year from Harvard Business Review. And every year for the past couple of years, they've looked at how people generally use generative AI in society. And in the latest 2025 data, what they found actually, and you can see on the right, is that the main uses of generative AI have shifted towards professional and personal support. So things like, therapy and companionship, organizing my life, finding purpose. It's really interesting that a piece of software like generative AI is now being used in such kind of human supportive and human ways. And again, it kind of goes to the idea of how organic this is as an entity. It's interesting to see enhanced learning, for example, coming up. And so people are using it not just for that kind of personal support, but also to genuinely engage and learn new things. And so the question is, what do we do in a university system when students are trying their best to learn, but also potentially sometimes using generative AI in ways that are more unhelpful for their learning? This is a Google Gemini with deep research. So I'm just going to play this video. And what deep, and there's no sound, so I'll narrate this. What deep research is that basically it's able to then take your prompt or your question and then search the internet for things, but not just search the internet, but actually think deeply about what it finds and actually come up with a synthesis of what it finds. So interestingly enough, when you watch a tool like this work, what it's doing is basically it's thinking to itself. It's saying, okay, this isn't the question I've been given. These are the sources I'm going to look for. I'm going to look for these sources. I'm going to read the sources, and I'm going to keep thinking about it. And so what you see on the screen paused here is after it's thought about how it's going to do its research, it's gone out to the internet to look for things. It's read all those documents at the speed of AI, and it's come back again and said, okay, my preliminary research suggests this. I've also identified these things, and so therefore I'm going to do something else now. That really interesting process of seeing the thinking of AI is quite curious, because this is kind of the thinking that we want our students to develop as well. We want our students to have these processes when they're working through a challenging problem that we give them, and we want them to be able to kind of look for sources, analyze sources, critique sources, and also kind of work through them to build their own ideas up, which is kind of what the AI is looking like it's doing here as well. And so these all raise interesting questions for higher education, because it means that the things that we used to do are tricky to keep doing. And the question is, well, what do we keep doing? What do we change? What do we stop? And what do we need to start? This is a really interesting article out in the New York Magazine a few months ago now. This is where they interviewed a whole bunch of students and professors, and they said that this challenge of generative AI in tertiary education is going unchecked. The GPT has unraveled the entire academic project because everyone seems to be cheating their way through college. Now, that is a very attention-grabbing kind of headline, and it's been the headline kind of in the last 2.5 years, but it's kind of good to see that tertiary education is trying to move beyond these. But I point this out because it's a live issue, right? As universities, we still need to make sure that students know what they need to know. Okay, and so the question is, how do we do this? The flip side is true as well. On the left, you have an article saying that professors are angry that students are using generative AI, and on the right, you're seeing that the students are angry because the professors are using generative AI. And there's even a picture of a disgruntled student on the front cover as well. And the idea behind these two things is generative AI almost, depending on how you frame it, generative AI almost pits students against teachers. And that's not a very helpful perception or perspective of what generative AI should be in higher education. So what does this mean about what we do? I'm going to split this next bit up into kind of two elements, one about assessment and what we do in the interim phase to deal with that in a thoughtful way. And also I'm going to be talking about teaching and learning and showing a couple of examples of what this means for how we can actually do things with AI. All right, so let's hit assessment first. The purpose, The impact, I think, on generative AI in assessment in tertiary education is, I think, comes out in this question of value, in that, what is the value now of our degree and award programs? And for me in this age, I think the value comes down to two things, one being integrity and the other one being relevance. Integrity means, do we still know that the person walking across a graduation stage knows what they need to know? And relevance is talking about, are we preparing students for this future where there's going to be constant change, they're going to be using technology, and they're going to need to engage with AI. Okay, so we need to kind of hold both the integrity and the relevance side by side. The question is, how do we do that? Now, initially in the first kind of 2 years of ChatGPT, a lot of institutions around the world started using things like what you're seeing on the screen. They started using things like traffic lights or AI assessment scales, and they usually look like something you see on the screen. They have different colors, they have different numbers, and the numbers and colors represent different levels of allowed AI use. Okay, so you might say for an assignment, it's a level 2 orange assignment, and therefore you're only allowed to use AI for editing. Okay. Now, obviously, this poses real challenges, and people have started to realize this more and more, that if you say to a student you're only allowed to use AI for editing, you don't know if they're listening to you, and there's no way for you to restrict this, and there's no way definitely for you to detect this. And if there are restrictions you're putting in place that cannot be enforced, this means that you ruin the validity of the assessment, which means that the assessment is no longer measuring what you think it is measuring. The other challenge that I have with this is that the assessment scales, the traffic light systems, they imply that there is a linear gradation of AI use. And when you think about your own use of AI in your own work, could you say for a particular piece of work that, I use AI as a level 2, or I use only level 1 AI? You can't really, because the way that we use AI is much more dynamic and flexible than that. We start with our own ideas. We might go and ask ChatGPT for some advice. We come back and do a bit of editing and drafting ourselves. We might go to Claude for some more advice and come back and go to Copilot. We dip in and out of using AI. There is no way to kind of specify for a particular task how far along a linear sliding scale it's meant to be. The other issue with this is that if we go ahead and tell students how they must be or how they should be using AI, it reduces the level of agency and autonomy that they have, which means they can't decide for themselves and work out for themselves how to engage with this. And so we're doing them this disservice if we're over specifying how they could use in AI. And so the approach that we're taking at Sydney is a slightly different metaphor. And the metaphor is one of a menu. And the idea of a menu is that the choices available to students are much more complex and nuanced and flexible than we would like to think. The menu emphasizes that there is not just one of 3 ways, okay, that students could use AI. There's a multitude of different ways. When you go to a restaurant and you see the menu, you might be a bit confused because the menu is very large and you may not know what is best to eat and what is healthiest to eat. So the role of the waiter at the restaurant is to help work out what the healthy choices or the best choices are for you when you go and eat at the restaurant. You may have some allergies, you may have some food preferences, there may be fresher meals at any time of year. And so the waiter's role is to help connect your needs with what is on the menu. In a very similar way, students have a whole lot of different ways they can use AI, and there's just a few ways on the screen here. There's many more. Our role as educators is not to say to students, you're only allowed to eat entrees today, or you're only allowed to have mains today. Our role as educators is to say, yes, we recognize that there is this whole menu of options of how to use AI in front of you. Our role as teachers is not to restrict or control your use of the menu or what you choose from the menu, but our role as teachers is to educate you on what is healthiest for you. So we might say to a student, these choices are the healthiest choices for assignment 1, okay? And these choices are the healthiest choices for assignment 2, because we understand the assignment, we understand what it takes to learn, we understand the students. And so our role as educators flips from one of control to one of conversation. And so we're trying to help students think through different ways that they can use AI effectively. Not to control them, they could go and eat 5 desserts. Okay, or they could eat everything from this menu. They could use AI for everything. And would they learn anything? Possibly not. Okay, so our role is to say, okay, menu is available. You can eat anything, but we're going to help you pick the healthiest options. But we can't just have that going on, because if students do eat everything from the menu and use AI for everything, they're probably not going to learn the things they need to learn. Hence, you need something which can kind of catch them. Now, it's really interesting. I'll talk about the catching in a couple of slides' time. It's really interesting that that over the years, as people have talked more and more to students, they have found that when students work with AI, there's a lot of different ways that they do it, and it's not according to a sliding scale. This is recent research out by JISC in the UK, and they've found, similar to the menu idea, they found that there is a increasingly sophisticated set of ways that learners are using AI. So there's no restraining how students do it. We need to kind of engage with them and help them think about the productive ways to actually use it. So we need to engage students with meaningful uses of AI, healthy choices of AI, but we also need to, as universities, we also need to confirm that the graduates know what they need to know. And so the approach that we're taking at the University of Sydney, and a lot of other institutions are adopting this now, is what we call the two-lane approach to assessment. Lane 2 assessments on the right, their role is to say to students, we accept that you're going to be using AI. Okay. Our role as teachers is to help you think about the healthier choices of using AI in order that you still learn your discipline, you develop the knowledge, you develop the skills that you need to develop. Okay. And we will support you in doing that, and AI will also support you as well. There is no way to stop, restrict, block, detect, control the use of AI in these lane 2 assessments because they are not observed. They don't happen in front of us. Now, we need lane 2 assessments because it accepts the reality of the situation, but we also need to check that students know what they know, that we need to verify their learning or their capability. And so the lane 1 assessments exist in order to kind of demonstrate to us, to the community, to students, to employers, that students actually know what they need to know. So lane 1 is observed and in person. It has to be in person. It can't be online because online is really easy to cheat for students these days. And so lane 1 assessments are ways that we can measure student capability in a trustworthy way because they're in front of us. Most of the time, this will involve not using AI. But sometimes it may actually involve the use of AI, and increasingly so as we progress. So as an example, a marketing graduate. Most marketing companies will not employ graduates who don't know how to use AI. And so a very real and valid lane 1 assessment for marketing might be actually you sit the student down in front of you, you talk to them, and then you say, I have a marketing idea. Can you show me how you would think about this with a client? And they may open up AI and work through it and use it to generate ideas for your marketing campaign. And that would be a very valid way of the lane 1 assessment where AI is also included. Okay. So we need lane 1, lane 2 assessments for us in order to, lane 2, engage students with good ways to use AI, but also lane 1 to confirm that they actually know what they need to know. Now, the way that this looks like for us, I'll give you one example. This is a program that I teach into myself, the Graduate Certificate in Educational Studies. So these are for postgraduate education students. This program for us has 4 different subjects or 4 different units. In these 4 units, there are about 13 to 14 different assessments. What we've done in the past year and a half is we've actually turned almost all of those assessments into lane 2 assessments. And for those assessments, we've said to students, here is the menu. We literally show them the menu that I just showed you a few slides ago. And we say, these are all the ways you can actually use AI, okay? You are welcome to use AI. We're going to show you some ways to use AI well. And we show them some slides and we demonstrate to them in class the different items from the menu, which we think will be more helpful for their learning. Okay. But we also say to them at the same time, make sure that even if you use AI, okay, AI use is not compulsory, but even if you use AI, make sure you do learn because we still have these lane 1 hurdle assessments, which you need to pass in order to pass those subjects. And so these are our way to verify that they actually have learned. Okay, so I was the co-coordinator for EDPR 5001 on the left, And for me, it was quite uncomfortable because for all of my assessments, students could actually use AI. I wasn't going to try and penalize them for the use of AI because I said to them, these are open. You're very welcome to use AI, but make sure you learn. And so for me, I had to rely upon my colleagues who were teaching the other two units, 002 and 003, who had these orange assessments to confirm and verify that my students had developed the capabilities they needed. Okay. So for me, it was an uncomfortable adjustment period, but it allowed me to let go. It allowed me to let go of being the policeman. It allowed me to let go of controlling how students use AI and to start to trust them a bit more and give them agency in how they decided to use AI themselves. Because I knew that they still needed to learn because they had these in-person, face-to-face conversations as part of these lane one assessments. And if they did not learn in my unit or my subject, then they would not be able to pass that unit. And the students knew as well. Okay? So it was liberating for them as well, because it means that they don't have to be afraid of AI anymore. They could use AI. They just needed to make sure that they were still learning. And after all, isn't that the main point of what we're doing in education is to actually encourage the act of learning. So to support our educators and our students in transitioning to this new approach, we've got two websites which I'm sharing on the screen now, and you can actually go to these URLs and they're open to the public to view. The one on the left is about 2.5 years, 2 years, 3 months old now. And around the middle of 2023, a lot of students came to us and said, we noticed that our peers are not using AI very well. And they wanted to help us help their peers. And so they helped us build a publicly accessible website, which you can access through that link, to demonstrate different ways that students can be using AI well. Okay, so I'll tab out of this very soon and just show you around the website. It's got lots of different examples of what they themselves use AI for. And on the right, we have a teacher-facing website, which is also public. And this gives you a lot of different examples of different forms of assessment that fit into lane 1 and 2, examples of how to work with your students and explain how generative AI works. Okay, so let me tab out of this and I will share a little bit about the website. Let me just go to this one here. Okay, so this first one here is the AI for students one. And what we have on this site is a whole bunch of different explanations, guidance around AI ethics and everything. But what I really like about this website is that the students have themselves prepared a whole bunch of different prompts and examples of how they themselves use it. And so, for example, here you can go in to say, okay, I'm a student and I want to overcome writer's block. Okay, and so you click on that, and then that'll take you to a page where basically the students have shared some prompts, okay, and some examples of how the AI might help them in actually unblocking themselves. Okay, and so really interesting examples from students themselves here. This one's a popular one, breaking down topics using the Feynman technique. And so the student then shares a little bit about how they prompt the AI in order to try and get it to help their learning as opposed to do the learning for them. Okay, so really good examples from students about how to not shortcut learning, but actually how to use AI productively for learning. This second website is the one that is teacher facing, and this one has a bunch of examples of different tools in regards to what is AI, how to talk to students about it, also how teachers themselves might be using AI as well. So for example, how do we use AI in planning? Okay, so maybe we can use AI to suggest some analogies. And again, there's going to be some prompts that help you as a teacher to think about this and explain how these things work as well. And also on this page, there is also a bunch of information about the assessments. Okay, so our lane 1, lane 2 assessments. So for example, you can say, go into, what is a lane 2 data analysis thing? Okay, and what does that look like? And some examples of it as well. Okay, so these two websites are open to you to have a look at if you find them helpful, and they contain a lot of what we've developed over the past 2.5 years about how to use AI well. Okay, so that's the kind of the assessment story, and it kind of starts to lead in a little bit to the learning and teaching story. So I want to think about how AI can be used well in learning and teaching briefly, show you a few things, and then we can have a conversation. The challenge, I think, with using AI in learning and teaching is how far do we go? And how do we use AI? Not whether we use AI for learning and teaching, is how is AI used by students and by us for learning and teaching. This is a really interesting paper out just a couple of weeks ago. Or actually, no, it was June. June when we in, oh, actually, no, it's 3 months ago. Far out. Time flies. And it talks about how they did a randomized controlled trial in AI tutoring. And they said that these AI tutors can outperform in-class active learning, which is a bit of a shock because, active learning only came about, big, had a lot of research around maybe 10 years ago, and it was active learning is better than lecturing. And now they're saying AI tutoring is better than active learning. And so the field is always changing. But as part of this article, they conjectured, what if an AI tutor could mimic this tutoring, one-on-one tutoring experience? Okay, maybe it can address the needs of the individual, okay, and adapt and adopt to their needs, and also adopt these best principles of science of learning. And so it's an interesting thought experiment for us in a way as educators, because we need to think about what is a good way to personalize learning without going too far. And I see this kind of on a spectrum from personalizing learning or to pampering learners. When you pamper a learner, you give them too much. You make it too easy for them. You reduce the friction of learning. And if you reduce the friction of learning too much to be a frictionless experience, they're probably not going to learn anything. So on one end of the spectrum, it's the idea that, the AI just does your work for you. Okay, obviously we don't want the AI doing this for students. But then we have other kinds of AI tools and uses of AI tools along the others, towards the other side of the spectrum. One of the tools that are coming out, or one of the approaches coming out, is AI which reads your calendar, right? And the AI may say something like, oh, I noticed you have a maths test coming up in 2 weeks' time, and you've been doing pretty poorly so far. Would you like me to show you some maths questions? And this is kind of AI directing your work as a learner. I see this coming out a lot more in the K to 12 primary and secondary space than I do in higher education. And I can see the appeal of it, but I also see the danger in it, in that it's reducing a little bit of the self-drive and self-motivation you need to actually be a good learner. Okay, so I'm not sure about this use of personalization. Another use of AI in learning has been, this happens a lot, this happens with us as well, with me. If we have a long document or a long paper, we just get AI to summarize it for us. Okay, I did this last night on something I was meant to read. And the question here is, sure, we can gain something from this, but also what do we lose? Okay, what do learners lose if they're using AI to summarize documents? And is that important? They're good questions to ask. Another thing that is quite popular with learners is this ELI5 approach. Explain it to me like I'm 5. There's a whole Reddit channel which is dedicated to ELI5. And the idea behind this is, generative AI is pretty smart. And so if you don't understand something, you can go to generative AI instead of your teacher and get it to explain and tell you stuff. Okay. Now, again, this may seem useful to students because they may feel like they understand things better because they've been explained something, but are they actually learning through this process? Okay. Going a little bit further, a bit more challenging now in terms of cognitive challenge for students, it's the idea that maybe a better way to use AI to learn is to actually get it to engage you in some Socratic dialogue. And this is where the AI won't tell you the answer, won't explain things to you, but it might ask you things to help you understand things better for yourself. Okay, maybe that's a better way to personalize learning. And all the way to the other end is, AI that just outright confuses us. All right, maybe like a teacher does as well. And whether if AI is purposely designed to confuse people, maybe that's a better way to learn. Okay, maybe if they point out particular misconceptions, maybe this is a better way to learn. So the underlying question here, I think, is that when we show students how to use AI and when they use AI, we need to think about what we lose. Okay, if we use AI in certain ways. If we use AI to explain it to me like I'm 5 or to summarize information, maybe we are losing the necessary cognitive load that is needed to learn something well. And we might be losing that if we use AI in certain ways. If we use AI to explain or to engage us in questions, then does that mean that the struggle that we have to go through as learners to think about things ourselves, that struggle is no longer happening. And someone is just actively questioning us. And what does this mean for our learning? And if we're getting AI to ask us questions, possibly to show us some misconceptions, and we don't need to sit there being confused, does that mean that we lose and our students lose the development of resilience and grit that we all had to develop when we were learning as well? So I don't know what the right answer here is, but I think it's a really important question to ask, because we need to make sure that we don't personalize learning so much to an extent that we pamper learners, that they don't actually go through the necessary metacognitive processes and strain and struggle to actually do learning well. Okay, so it's an interesting kind of a thought experiment. Now, I'll show you another kind of a perspective here, which is the ways that students can use these kind of more open-ended tools like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude is quite an interesting open-ended question for education. And it's because, once upon a time before ChatGPT came around, teachers and students had this relationship. It was beautiful. We relied on each other, and students would come to us for questions. But then once generative AI came around, we had students going to generative AI, we had teachers using it, and we didn't tell each other. Okay, and then we started to mistrust each other. And not only was there a building of mistrust over the past 2.5 years, there are other issues with these kind of open-ended tools. One was they cost money. I mean, there are free options, but they also, many of them cost some money if you want access to the better versions of the AI. And so there was inequity creeping in. There was a lack of control and visibility for teachers when students were using these tools. And also there was a bit of unsureness about whether or not we could actually trust them, because were they grounded in what we were teaching students in our subjects and our courses? And of course, there are privacy concerns around what the companies are doing with our data, and are they taking it away? And so this all kind of led us to think about, for the purposes of learning and teaching, are there ways that we can give AI to teachers so that they can create experiences, AI-enabled experiences for their students that are going to be good for learning? And so our solution a couple of years ago was to try and build something which could actually help teachers to use AI productively and responsibly. And one of the thought processes around this is, what does this exactly look like? Now, I quite like this. If you haven't come across it before, it's called the SAMR model, SAMR. This was out way before generative AI. It was out maybe 20, 30 years ago, and just talked about how education technologies can be generally used in serving learning. At the substitution level, what you have is, once you had a human tutor explaining something, and now you have an AI tutor explaining something. Okay, we're just swapping AI for a human, swapping a human for an AI. Now, augmentation talks about how maybe, let's just not think about swapping, but let's think about how to do things better. And so maybe once upon a time you had teachers writing feedback to students, and you still do, obviously, but maybe now you can also have students working with AI on feedback before they submit. Okay, so improving and changing a little bit about how we do things. We also have the idea of modification, which is around changing a bit more. Maybe we have a written case study before, but now we can have with AI an interactive case study where students don't have to just read through a 2-pager and think about it, but they can actually interact with the case study live. And redefinition is thinking about what we couldn't do before, but we can now because AI is here to help us. Now, many AI tools will stay at this level. They'll say, this is an AI tutor. Okay, you can upload your documents there, it'll explain things to your students, and you're done. Okay, but the idea is, that again, on that kind of spectrum, explaining and Socratic questioning, is that quite enough? Is that the right way to learn for your discipline? I think we need to take a much more open-ended thinking about AI and have a think about what are the different ways that we can actually improve learning through AI, which are not just swapping out a human tutor and swapping in an AI tutor. So one of the tools that we've been developing at the University of Sydney is called Cogniti, and we share this for free with many institutions around the world. And the idea behind Cogniti is that it gives teachers the ability to build their own custom AIs in a way that the teacher understands to be best for learning. Okay, and it may not be an AI tutor, it may be something else. So this is a quick video that demonstrates what it is. So the idea is, a teacher, you come and create these agents, and the agents will interact with your students on your behalf. So for example, here we're going to create a question generator agent, okay, as an example, and we're going to talk to the AI on the right, and the AI is going to help us build this agent. And we're going to say we want an agent that talks about AI in education, and then we're going to show it some learning outcomes. And then the AI is going to think about what we've given it, and then ask us a few more clarifying questions, just check what we would like to build, and then it's going to build itself, okay, on the left. So on the left are all the instructions that then go into the AI to help it do what we want it to do as a teacher. So what we're doing here essentially is we're saying we have very powerful AI available to us as teachers, and we can now control the behavior of this powerful AI so that it operates in a way which is actually helpful for learners. We can add on resources here, okay, if we want, so course-specific information, and then we can also try and chat with this particular agent. And so the agent, like we've told it to, it gives students questions, okay? It asks them questions, maybe it confuses them a little bit because the questions are challenging, and then the students have to interact with the AI like this. So the idea behind this is that it gives you as a teacher the ability to say, I know how learning best happens. And learning best happens, at some point along that spectrum that we saw before. And I can now control the AI in a way which means that I can help my students use it well. Obviously, a student could still go to ChatGPT and use that. Okay, nothing stopping them. But for the student who actually wants to learn, which is most students actually, they can come here and do this. As a teacher, you can also view the history, okay? So you can see what students are talking about, and so you have visibility over this, and therefore transparency and trust. And you can also get AI to summarize for you what the students are saying as well, okay? So the idea is giving powerful AI into the hands of teachers to actually help them to steer it to help students learn. Now, final stretch. There's a few mindsets, I think, which are useful to think about when we come to using AI. And when people start to use AI, they initially say, wow, this is pretty powerful. I can get AI to make stuff for me. And this idea is AI as a peon. A peon is a person in the olden days who would make products and food and crops for their lord to consume. And if we see AI as a peon, we just see AI as something that feeds us things. Okay, not the most helpful way to see AI. Seeing AI as a partner instead is much more helpful. We actually start to think about how we can get perspectives and input from AI and not just the output. And hopefully, if we can do this and help our students to realize the ways that they can shift their thinking, that AI is not just for making stuff, but actually for bouncing ideas and for getting perspectives, we can help them and us and our colleagues start to shift the thinking away from AI is cheating to AI is learning, or AI can support learning, and therefore shifting the conversation from AI as a threat to AI as opportunity, and from trying to be police to trying to think about the possibilities of AI for all of us. So some big questions to end up on. It was really interesting that in the first kind of few months, maybe year even, or year and a half, that the conversation around AI was thinking about the how. Okay, how do we assess these days now and have integrity? How do we teach now that AI is being used by our students? How do students learn better? I think those are good questions to ask. But it's interesting that the shift in questioning, I think, over the past 6 to 12 months has changed to not just the how, but also the what. What is still worth learning? If AI is getting better all the time, what should we still be teaching, and what should students still be learning? But I think more powerful questions than that, even, that we need to start asking ourselves now is the why and the who. Who are these people who we are nurturing as they're working with us through higher education? And who do we want them to become? To answer that question, I think we need to think about what it is that we do, okay, in higher education. We have traditionally focused a lot on content and stuff. Okay, students come to us in class and we pour knowledge and stuff and content into our students' heads. And I don't know if that has been the main focus, but I don't know if that should be the focus going forwards. Universities have been focusing, I think, more and more on these durable skills. And so things like creativity, communication, collaboration, and that's been more so mentioned now that AI is around. But I think something that universities don't typically do very well is this third circle here, which is around the person, the soul, okay? And around that kind of, are we building good citizens? Are we building people who have compassion? Are we building people who have curiosity? You know, these really soulful ideas that what it means to be a human, I think we need to focus more on, especially as AI gets better. We have traditionally, as higher education, we've focused too much on the top left. We've focused a little bit on the top right, and we really haven't focused on the bottom yet. And I think a final thing we need to focus on really is this thing in the middle, which is the idea of self, the person who we are trying to develop. Are they learning how to persevere? Or are they just using AI for shortcuts? Are they learning about how to learn? Okay, or are they getting AI to do the learning for them? Are they learning how to self-regulate? Are learning about themselves in this process? And I think we need a much better balance of all these four circles in higher education going forwards. Otherwise, we're not going to be serving our students well. And the other idea here is that we need to start thinking about what we do as teachers, what we do as educators. We often get stuck thinking about technology, the shiny things. Okay? And we don't think as much maybe about how we're approaching education. So these are the approaches and strategies that we use as teachers. We think possibly a bit less even on recall, attention, the learning sciences. Okay, so how actually learning happens, not just how to do the teaching, but how learning happens in the first place. But I think at the base of this pyramid, the thing that is really important is the idea of connection, is the idea that do students feel connected to each other, to their teachers, to the discipline, to the content? Are they motivated? Do the students feel like they matter to somebody? And if we miss the bottom, then the whole pyramid collapses. But we so often get stuck at the top of the pyramid. So I think the challenge for us is to really focus up on what we need to focus up and not get distracted by the shiny things, even though they're good and can be in service of everything else. But we need to focus on what is important, the human nature of teaching. So last slide, I think the encouraging thing is that the path forward is not predetermined. I saw this written online and I thought I'd share it with you because it's quite a special kind of thing. I quite enjoyed reading this thing. This thing said, the path forward is not predetermined, okay? It's actively shaped by the choices that we make now. Because I think this is a very significant moment in history. It's a fundamental shift in what society values as what we call formal education. And if we can navigate this paradigm shift, this means that we can help prepare our students for lives of meaning and purpose. Okay, I really love these quotes. Do you know where I saw this written? Gemini Deep Research wrote this. So it's really interesting what we can get out of AI. And thank you. Happy to have a conversation.
Thank you very much, Danny. It has been really enlightening. And I'm sure everyone is as interested as I am in your talk. So let's start with our Q&A session. It will be brief. So let's move on to it. First of all, we have Dr. Melchor Sanchez Mendiola. He asked the following. Could you provide some suggestions about how to combine the students and university authorities, of course, that desirable difficulty is essential for deep, meaningful learning? Frictionless learning and the illusion of learning can be a huge issue for training professionals.
Yes, really great question. So you can tell stories, or you can do an activity with people. Let me see if I can actually make an activity now. Sorry, just give me a second. I'm going to share my screen again, and then I can see if I can pull something up. So one activity that we try with our students sometimes, I'll just share my screen so I can make this for you. Screen one. Okay, one activity that we sometimes try with our students is we try this activity. The activity is you have a few words. So you have something like train. You have 5-letter words. Patch. You have what's another 5-letter word? Brain or something like this. Okay, and then you say, okay, well these are some 5-letter words. And I'm also going to give you some other ones which are like this, okay, and then W, okay, and then you say to people, get a piece of paper out, and on this piece of paper, write down these 6 words. The words on the left, you just need to memorize. The words on the right, you need to actually think about yourself. You need to actually come up with yourself. And then you say to them, okay, well, write these 6 words down, put the paper away. Wait about 5-10 minutes, talk about something else, and then get them to try and remember what these 6 words were. And I can guarantee you that they will be able to remember the words on the right, but not the words on the left. And the reason is because there was difficulty in doing the right-hand words, but not difficulty in doing the left-hand words. There was the perception of ease in left-hand words, because that feels like we're learning train, Patch, and Brian, okay? But the difficulty that is desirable for actually learning comes when you actually use things in your brain. So this is a very simple demonstration that we sometimes do with our students to help them understand the principle of desirable difficulties.
Thank you very much. That was very good explanation. I will steal it once I have the opportunity. Next one. It comes from Patricia Manzano Fisher. Thank you for your presentation. It's very useful and interesting. Is Cogniti available in Spanish or other languages?
Yeah, so we share Cogniti's code, and I think UC has actually developed it for Spanish. So this is a university in Chile. And so there is the ability to change into different languages, and we're happy to share.
Thank you very much. We are really interested in hearing from you about. Okay, next one from YouTube. It says, what about the generative AI hallucinations when we are creating this kind of tools?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one we get asked often. Whenever you introduce your students to generative AI, any generative AI, even a generative AI you make for yourself, it is really important to emphasize to them that generative AI still hallucinates, and that is, it's going to be a problem for now in any kind of tool. We can reduce hallucination by providing the custom AI in whatever tool you use, with some more resources and knowledge and specificity around what you want to do, but there is no way right now to reduce hallucinations to 0. So it's about education. It's about kind of sharing with your students that they still need to use their brain when they use the AI. And I think that's an important lesson.
Yeah, and LLMs are rapidly developing, so I think that will not be a problem in the future. Okay, next one. The analogy you present about the role of the teacher as a waiter who guides the students to eat healthier. There are 2 questions about this. The first one, how and how much does a teacher have to prepare to be a good waiter? And the second one, how can we get the dinner a student to decide to eat healthy if unhealthy food gives them immediate satisfaction?
Yeah. Lovely questions. So how to be a good waiter? A good waiter doesn't have to be a good chef. Okay, so you don't actually need to know the guts of what's going on inside the AI in order to know how to use the AI. You just need to be able to connect your students' needs with what the cooks, the chefs are actually producing. And so hopefully you don't feel like you need to know everything about AI, but you need to know and experience AI for yourself in how it applies to your discipline. And so this really just means spend half an hour a week experimenting, like 10 minutes every couple of days, experimenting with different AI tools or different ways to use AI. The websites that I gave you will maybe give you a good start, and there's tons of websites out there which have different examples of how people are using AI as well. So part of it is just learn it. If you're a waiter at a restaurant, you will try the food first for yourself, and that way you can tell your customer, I tried the lasagna the other day, it was pretty good, and so you can actually do a bit of experimentation yourself to actually do it. It is a bit time consuming, but I encourage you to try it, to share with your colleagues as well. We have to learn together through this. So it's a lovely question actually. The second one is how do we work with those who want immediate satisfaction? There was a student we were talking to recently in chemistry, and he said, he was really excited about generative AI. He's a first-year student, and he got generative AI to make all his chemistry notes for him. And then when he sat the exam, he couldn't write anything down because he realized he knew nothing. And so there was the immediate satisfaction of getting the notes written out for him perfectly and then actually not learning anything. So telling stories like this and having the assessments where you actually need to verify student learning, that is an important balance to have. So you still need verification, but you also need to have those open-ended assessments where students are welcome to use AI how they want, and students will learn. It's a paradigm shift for them as well. Over the 6, 12, 18 months, they will also learn.
That's great answer. Thank you very much. Next one. Well, about Cogniti, can a professor from UNAM have access to Cogniti? You have already told us that there are certain possibilities. Okay, next one. Let me check. How can we motivate educational institutions to move beyond an instrumental view of AI, focus merely on what the technology can do, and embrace a truly transformative perspective, where the central question becomes, how can we enhance learning through AI?
Yes, lovely question. I think it is that slide I showed about the different questions we need to ask. I think we need to start asking ourselves deeply who it is that we are nurturing as they go through us, and what therefore those students need. And the kind of the uncertainty of the future that our students and graduates will be facing as well. If we can ask those really deep questions of ourselves, who it is that we're developing, and think of those 4 circles as well, hopefully we can get the right conversations going to say, well, let's stop focusing so much on one thing and think about the person who we're trying to develop. Because I think fundamentally what AI has shown us is that we need to be more human. And how can we help our students be more human?
I think something we should never forget. Okay, next one. There is an ethical or legal international regulation for AI gen for scientific text, particularly for journal indexed. And what do you think about author property of this particular text created with AI?
Interesting. I'm trying to find that question up there. To see if I can get...
This is from YouTube. Yeah.
Okay. So can you just repeat the question? I want to try and understand it better.
Okay, I will put it on the chat.
Okay, thank you. Ethical or legal international regulation. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So, I mean, we know a lot of researchers now are using generative AI to write and support support research and writing and those kind of things. And I think journals especially need to accept that this is going to be a part of, they accept that this is a part of research and life now in higher education. And so I think what needs to happen is that we need to kind of both accept it, but also double down on the responsibility of researchers to own what they say and what goes into journals. So the text generated by AI, I think, is it's good most of the time if you use it well. And what needs to happen really is that we need to work with, educate researchers, educate journals to accept this, but to also emphasize human responsibility.
Thank you very much. Next one. How can we rethink our current assessment models, which often rely on standardized testing to create a new, more personalized, formative, and fair system supported by AI tools?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the risk with capability verification is that we go back to exams and we kind of get stuck in exams and tests. What we're trying to do at University of Sydney is that website that I showed you before, that website has a lot of different examples of verifiable assessments which are not exam-based. And so it could be interactive oral, it could be an observation of a skill, it could be something else, So there are different ways that we can actually in-person observe, verify capability that aren't going to be just standardized testing. So encourage people to kind of think through those possibilities.
Yeah, totally agree. Next one from Cesar Saavedra. How to deal with generative artificial intelligence when in many parts of Latin America in particular, we have enormous literacy problems. In fact, there is talk of dysfunctional literacy.
Yes, and this is an interesting thing about digital divide as well, and also just that the inequity kind of. So I think there's a possibility for AI to assist in those situations, but we need to make sure that people have the right infrastructure and the right grounding to be able to engage with these as well. So yeah, very challenging issue.
Yeah. So next question, which comes in Spanish, is almost the same. How can we teach our students AI if we ourselves as professors are afraid of these technologies? So, okay, well, that is almost the same. So we mark it as answered. Next one, thank you for your presentation. In Mexico, the use of emerging digital technologies such as Gen AI has been a subject to debate due to existing structural social difference. However, efforts are being made to integrate them into different educational contexts, for example, in rural areas. From this, two questions arise for me. How can we try to avoid the digital divide with the integration of Gen AI? And second, what aspects do you consider necessary to take into account regarding the black boxes of Gen AI, and how can they be countered? That's the question.
Yeah, no, I'm just reading it now. It's a good one. And I've just noticed we've gone 3 minutes over, so I'll probably need to make this my last question, if that's okay.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. So it's a good question to end on, actually. The digital divide, I think, is one is that institutions need to provide access to the tools for their students and their staff. And we need to be able to work with the vendors, find the budgets for this, because that is one way that we can address the divide. Because it's not fair, if students can afford better AI, then they can get better outputs from it and they can learn more about it. So that's definitely institutional access is definitely important. Regarding the black boxes, how can they be counted? I think part of it is education. We can, because of the unknown ways that these AIs work, in the similar way to our brains work in very unknown ways. I think it's important to educate people a little bit about how these AIs work in a very kind of neural network, kind of not in any detail, but just like they're brain-like in how they work. And so trying to help people think about, yes, they are black boxes and they are very organic, and it's something to be worked with as opposed to be counted. If we can understand that this is the way that these AIs work in a very kind of biological almost way, then we can start thinking about, okay, well, when I use AI, it's not a database. I have a conversation with it and it might get some things wrong. And I see it as a partner here to help me as opposed to a answer machine.
Thank you so much for all the answers you have provided us. There are many, many questions that reflects the enormous interest on this area. But now I pass the floor to Dr. Boris Escalante to close this session. Thank you very much and good morning, Danny.
Thank you very much, Danny, for your great conference. It's been very inspiring and interesting, and it's really triggered many people's attention, as you can see in the questions. I liked very much what you said at the end, that education remains a human action, and it's up to us to make a good use of Gen AI techniques and everything. So it's been very interesting, and I thank you very much, Danny. I hope we can soon somehow meet again and cooperate somehow. Thank you very much on behalf of everyone here in Mexico. And well, thank you. See you next time. Okay.
Thank you so much. Sorry to get to all the questions.
It's fine. It's great. Thank you very much, Dan.
All right. Thank you.